Well, hello, good morning. Welcome to Dare Whimsy and the girls of Dare Whimsy, Between Us Girls. I am Sarah Cook. I'm hoping that I am not frozen. My screen shows that I'm frozen, so I'm hoping that you can see me. And I am glad to be here with Gail Roddy. We have some other gals that are trying to get in, and we'll see if they make it here today. So thank you for being with us. And today we're talking about the pressures of life in general and the expectations we have on ourselves as gifted women and how we take care of ourselves. And it's really important that we do make that time to take care of ourselves, because after all, we are the ones that have to manage our own lives, our own schedules, and we are responsible for so many things. So Gail, why don't you go ahead and share with us, what are some things that you do to stop the pressure from beating down on you so hard and actually make that self-care an important part of your day?
Hi, Sarah. It's okay. Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty here, but the message is still the same. We are here, Between Us Girls, to talk about what is important for a healthier life for us gifted girls. You know, we all, as women, we have so many roles that we play in life. We're mothers, we're daughters taking care of elders, we're spouses, we're aunts, we're teachers. We have so many roles. And, you know, people come to us and ask, because we are so competent and so wanting and willing and able to help, people come to us and ask us to help all the time, to assist them with various things. And most of the times we're very willing and able to help people. But you know, there comes a point where we can just get overwhelmed with all the requests on our time and our internal and external resources. So we do have to manage that. And we've talked about this on the show many times, about how it is a struggle for all of us as women and as gifted girls, especially because we are so capable of multitasking and having lots of energy. But you know, we burn out just like anyone else. You can overdo and get to the place where you're just shot. And so we have to take a pause. And we're all learning that. We're all supporting that. And I think that's what it takes. It simply takes awareness that this must be a part of our lives, or we're going to shut down and not be able to help anyone. So we constantly have to remind one another, support one another in taking care of self, so that we'll be able to help all of those situations and people that need us and want us and embrace us. I see Dr. Edith is here. Dr. Edith, I know you are very good at being able to manage your time and to have fun in between. And wouldn't you say that that's a big piece of it, that how you manage is to have fun? I know you've spoken about that many times, and you seem to be really, really good at that.
Well, thanks, Gail. Yeah, having fun's important, and it can be just split seconds, pauses, whatever. But the main thing is yeah, if we're workaholics or if we're just totally focused into something, our whole being is out of balance. And we're not talking just life, but inside and outside, we get a little bit squirrely. And so I really, really have to concentrate on, okay, I've been at it now for 2 hours. It's time to take a break. And I'm very deliberate in that, but I'm also very deliberate in it and planning it out. So I have my wish list, some call it a bucket list or whatever, but for me, I get that rest, relaxation, that fun by trying something new and different, and especially going places. So putting those things deliberately on my schedule and deliberately into the planning and making so that we can go enjoy ourselves. Pausing, knowing what's of value to us, looking at how we spend our time, who we spend it with, what our variety is, what our values are. Yeah, I come back to that quite a bit too. But what is important to us, because we can get overwhelmed, as I know Gail has said before, by saying yes, yes, yes to everyone else. We need to say No at times, because it's not necessarily as a priority for us in our lives. And then we want to balance encouraging and helping others with the fact that we don't want to enable them. And so we also want them to respect us in that way too, and that our time and being is very much of value. So yeah, overworking, over-focusing on something which can be an asset as well as a disadvantage means that we just need to kind of take a moment and say, is this the best thing for me at this moment? Is this in line with what I want to live, who I want to be, and what I want to give and how I want to give? And we can learn from each moment and each place and each fun thing we have.
And from each person, wouldn't you say too, Dr. Edith? I was thinking, you and I are of a little more mature generation, and I think about our mothers and how many of them didn't work outside the home. My mother did as I got in a little further into school. But would you say things are different today? I'm just thinking about, I'm very much into multi-generation connections with women. Is there anything that you can think of that we could tell the younger women, because life we're kind of in the middle where we know what went on in the previous generation and we kind of see what's going on in the younger generation. We want to try to help them move through these passages and maybe not make some of the mistakes that we made and the previous generations make. I'm just wondering if you maybe have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, when we look at generation scale, as you say, we can always learn both from our elders and we can learn from our youth. We can learn from our peers. We can learn from each other because each of us have a different perspective. One of the things I think with the youth today is that everything is so immediately available to them that taking a pause becomes a major effort, a real big effort to take a pause and say, do I really want that? Is that what because most of the time in talking to youth, there's a lot of them that have no idea what they want. It's all coming at them, so they take whatever in the moment makes sense. And so for me, it's really important that we encourage them to make conscious choices instead of just allowing it all to come at them. And yeah, that immediate gratification, that immediate interaction can be really fun. It can be really thrilling. And yet at the same time, it can be overwhelming and overstimulating, provide us with too many options, and we feel scattered and uncollected, have no idea where we're going or what we're doing. I'm just going to do it for the moment. And in that moment, things can snowball. And sometimes that snowball is not quite going in the direction of our preferred path. And so taking a pause and asking, is this something I'll really enjoy? Is this something I really want to spend my time with? Is this someone I want to spend my time with? It's important. But even as adults, when we're working really hard and we're in that career growth period where we think we've got to get ahead and have to have everything, we have to ask those questions too. And so as we pass it on to the youth, because everything's coming so quickly to them, and yet at the same time, when we get into that workaday world, sometimes we don't allow for the exuberance. And that's where looking at that youth and learning from the youth and remembering and recalling our own exuberance, our own childlike wonder, and watching them. And today, with the fact that there is so many things available, that childlike wonder sometimes has expanded beyond. Life circumstances come up, and people out of survival will shut down. It's called survival. There's ways I have to protect myself. I can't hear that. I can't see that much. So then in that case, yes, we need to be able to protect ourselves, and our childlike wonder can hide. But it's there. It's that twinkle in the eyes. It's that daringness among each other. It's part of growing. It's part of learning. And it all comes involved, again, to watching, learning, being aware, and making conscious choices of who we are and what we want. I see Sarah's back with us at the moment. Hey, Sarah, we were talking about intergenerational connections as far as being able to learn from each other, make pauses, and at the same time be able to enter into what we choose as a value to us in life. Would you add to that with your experiences?
Well, I think definitely, like you talked about before I got bumped off, is that we have choices that we can plan those things. I think with my children and then also my parents and grandparents making time or scheduling time to take those pauses and having lots of intentionality with it is really, really key, because relationships and self-care among generations doesn't just happen. It is something that has to be planned for and something that has to be an on-purpose type, an on-purpose type thing. And so it's really, really key that we put those things on the schedule, whether it's Skyping with people that live far away, or whether it's taking a trip, or whether it's going to the cabin. All of those things are really key to take some time that way. What about you, Gail? Tell me some other things that you're doing, because I know that you have your mom still with you. And what are some things that you've learned from her with regards to self-care and taking time out that you found valuable?
Oh, Sarah, it's so interesting you would say that, because as you were talking, I was thinking that very same thing, is that my mother is 90 this year, and she has taught me so much. She needs care, of course, but she is doing very well, and she tells me all the time about how people want to go to lunch with her, or they want her to do this. So she belongs to several elder groups, and they go on excursions, and she loves that. But she tells me all the time that, well, I'm going, she has a group, this isn't their real name, but she she calls them the crotchety old ladies. And so she said, well, this week the crotchety old ladies are meeting, and so I want to go to lunch with them, but then there's the elder gentleman group on Thursday. So I have to decide which one I want to go to, because I can't do both. So she really has to pace herself, or she will just be exhausted. So she has kind of been my bellwether. She lets me in on how to pace myself to not be overwhelmed, because she simply can't be overwhelmed at 90 years old. She has to pace herself, and these are all very fun things, but she knows that she can't do them all. So that's just been an understanding for me, that even all the fun things that I want to do, I have to pace myself, because you can just get burned out doing everything. As Dr. Edith said about the young people today, have so many choices of things that they can be involved in, things that they can go to and participate in, things that we just didn't know about. I mean, think of the social media that didn't even exist when we were their age, and that takes up a lot of time in the average person's life. So I'm watching my mom and seeing how she paces herself, and it's cool. I've got to pay more attention to that, and I am. And I'm learning to pace myself, learning to say no to even some of the fun things that people invite me to, because even though they might be fun, they might be coming at a point in my week where I'm just overwhelmed with other stuff that needed to get done, and I'm tired, and I really need to pace back and take care of myself. And so that's just as important, absolutely just as important.
Something that I would also love us to consider is, how do we go ahead and teaching that generation? Because when the next generation, what do I do to instill, because there's so many more pressures with all the social media demands and the instant gratification that this new generation experiences, and the pace at which they're expected to learn and grow and all those things. What do you think are some ways that we can do a better job teaching self-care and teaching time out and teaching that need for rest and reflection? What can we do with that?
Dr. Edith, why don't you go ahead and go? I have some ideas, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, I think many a times that as mentors, and I think we've all learned this the hard way, especially in this group, because we're concentrating on it and we're focusing on that self-care and how to do it. But so many times there's just no awareness. There's no awareness that this isn't what life is all about. There's no awareness that each of us can make choices and choose and decide what we want to do and how we want to do in our lives. One of the tools this week as each of us have sister posts and presented is I'm looking at wanting people to look concretely at what roles do you play. You're a sister, a mother, a daughter, a coworker, a boss, a leader, a volunteer. What are all the roles you play? And then looking at, okay, what are all the demands of each of those roles? And even as children, and even as high schoolers, if you look at high schoolers and if they're fairly gifted, they're doing band, and they're doing music, and they're doing science, and they're doing athletics, and they're doing the theater, and they're doing private lessons, they're doing public school, they're doing the AP courses. And then you look at all those roles too, and we want to know what are the demands on our life for each of those roles. And then which of those demands need our personal attention, and which one of those demands can we let go of, either by delegating, by eliminating as not necessary, by reassigning, by looking at it, reframing it, so that it can be combined with something else. Again, maximizing our effort, our energy, and our skills and abilities and talents and time. So I think we used to teach home ec in school. I think life skills is important, and life skills beyond the fact this is how you use a spoon to stir in a bowl, or this is how you go and do your checkbook. I think those are all important too, but life skills of interpersonal relationships, self-care, self-development are just as important. And for me, I think those are things that need to start from, and we do that at home. I think, Sarah, you've outlined that, as you said, giving the children choices of responsibility with your stickies and things like that. These are things that need to be done here at the home. Who's going to make that choice of which activity they're going to do to support this family as a functional unit? And I think as communities, because it takes the whole village, and Gail support me on that, it takes the whole village to raise all of us, and we're still all being raised no matter what our age is. And it takes that village to do it. So again, what choices will we make? What's on the table? What needs to be done? And those are just some of the ideas that I look at, but I really reinforce the fact of being aware, being consciously aware of all the roles you play, because that gives it a label, which then you can put into it, okay, what all goes into being a mother, what all goes into being a wife, what all goes into being the leader and the business owner that I am. And then which one of those tasks and demands are things I need to do, or as we've heard one of our other colleagues say, which ones do I need to delegate to someone else that has those talents too, and allow them to demonstrate their talents. Gail, what would you add or elaborate on all of that?
Well, I was thinking that same thing, Dr. Edith. You kind of brought it up, the whole notion of home economics, how it taught basic life skills. And as I remember, that was 100 years ago, but I kind of remember that it wasn't just about learning how to sew or learning how to bake a cake. It was about the basic life skills of these are all things that help enhance your life. To know how to do these things, to know how to sew. It wasn't just about sewing, it was about knowing how, because those were times when you needed to know those things. They were just concrete, critical to life. And so I think it boils down to, how do we teach the young? We teach them by example, basically by example. That's how it's been done forever, for generations, is they teach the young people by example. I was thinking of a funny story. My dad was an avid smoker. He was in World War II and he started smoking back then. And I remember him just admonishing me, you should not smoke, you should not smoke, as he was pulling out another Camel. And I mean, those were the days, and now I understand he was addicted. He wasn't being hypocritical. He was addicted, and I know now that that was the reason he admonished me not to smoke. But it's kind of funny because if you're going to tell your children not to smoke, it's probably a pretty good idea that you don't smoke yourself. That's just a way out example. But I think that if we're going to instill things in young people, we need to be practicing them, and not to perfection. You know, in this group, we constantly talk about how we gifted girls can go way overboard into either or. If we're going to do it, it has to be perfect, or we don't start it at all. That's just another teachable moment too, to show that it isn't about perfection, but it's about awareness, as Dr. Edith said, and moving from awareness through watching others as they even struggle to maintain this self-care. That's the critical component, is to teach that it isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and moving forward with what you want to enhance your life and how you view the world. We always want to show that that's possible. Not easy, but possible if you just take it one step at a time. Sarah, I know you have something to add to that, especially as being a mother. And, you know, I just got to add one more little thing. I have started your Stickies. I have to get into the spiral, but boy, those Stickies are working for me, Sarah, especially when you use the little ones.
Right.
Where you can just put a couple of things on them and you're not overwhelmed. When you get into the bigger ones, you know, it's just a little bit more, but these small ones where I could just put a note on, think about this, do this, engage that. That is just so cool, Sarah. I just want you to know that.
That's awesome. Well, I do have some things to share that as each of you were talking, I thought of some things, and it reminded me of a conversation this morning. My daughter and I were coming home from her early morning religion class that starts at 6 in the morning, and we were driving home from that, and we were talking about giftedness and expectations and taking care of ourselves, and we were talking just this conversation. And it was interesting to me that one of the things that came out was setting a timer for saying, you know, everything has to be done to perfection, we think sometimes as gifted women. And so setting a timer for different tasks so that you allow for self-care. Because if you're driven to perfection, then every single assignment, whether it's a 1-paragraph, you know, a 2-paragraph essay, or whether it's this masterpiece for an art portfolio, you know, that's going to be graded heavily, each of those things has different values as far as what time should be put on it. And if we don't judge what those time requirements are, then we end up spending all of our time completely to exhaustion, and we don't have that time for self-care. And so I've talked to her a lot about that, because I remembered being a senior in high school, which is what she is, and I was so driven to fill out all the scholarship applications and, you know, master my ACT test and, you know, do all these things and all the AP classes I was taking, that I literally got super, super sick my senior year. I missed like 10 or 12 days of school in a row, and I was physically completely exhausted. I wasn't sleeping, and it was like a flashback this morning as we were talking, that I needed to share that with my daughter, that this is a time to really learn, as you're still in high school and you're still living at home, to practice self-care, to learn to pace yourself, to learn to put priorities on certain things that are important to you, and then let other things go, like just good enough is good enough on those other things. Because as she moves out and goes to college and then establishes her own, you know, her own career and so forth, that understanding of valuing things that are of importance and things that are not so important, and also learning to practice self-care, is going to be crucial for her success, because she is still learning to say no to people who expect her to do something just because she can, but not necessarily does she need to. So we've talked a lot about that too. So as we're teaching, I think it's important for us to remember back to how we own own that own experience ourselves. How did we come to understand learning to take care of ourselves? And what was that process, so that we can maybe pass on that process and help guide them and mentor them through. I hope that makes sense. But those are some of the things that I learned today, for sure.
So it sounds like we're kind of all in agreement, Sarah and Edith, that modeling is very important.
Very.
Especially for our daughters and our nieces and anyone else that we teach. It's very important to model this self-care behavior and not just talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think too, as we work through the process, I think it's something that's been really painful for me to do, but I think it's been really helpful as well, not just for myself, but for other people, is to allow other people to see our vulnerability of it, to say, hey, like a Monday, I had this chocolate bar. I just had wanted chocolate bar so bad, and I hadn't had sugar in a couple months, and I ate my chocolate bar. In fact, I ate half of the bar because I just thought it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And so I ate this chocolate bar, and every single bite was gross. It was absolutely disgusting. And I was so disturbed because I really wanted a treat. And so sharing that because I had taken sugar out of my diet and I'd made more extreme self-care a practice as we're going through a different level of healing at our house with health issues, it's interesting to share those things that we used to find so, were so important to us, to share our stories on social media and with our family and friends, so that they can understand that there is different levels of self-care as you have different needs in your life, and that it's okay to fall back and fall off the wagon, but you need to get back on if it's important for you to stay healthy. So, all right, well, we're about ready to wrap up our show. So, Dr. Edith, what other closing words can you share with us?
I'm learning lots at the moment on the fly.
I know you are. I appreciate it.
I'm just wanting to say that, yes, us becoming aware and reinforce all of us here as Dare Whimsy women and Dare Whimsy friends and community, that learning, modeling, sharing, and being conscious of it, and sharing our vulnerability and knowing that a changes go on, it's important to share. All right, Sarah, let's wrap her up.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you for joining us here live today. The three of us have had a great time talking amongst ourselves. And also, too, if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay, for taking time to invest in being part of this community of Dare Whimsy women. And I hope that you will go ahead and look at darewhimsy.com to see our sister posts there, as well as leave some comments and tell us who you are and what you find valuable in the area of self-care. And then if you like what you read in the sister post, go ahead and follow that person home and see a little bit more about them, because as we investigate each other and as we learn more about each other, we often find some things that we learn about ourselves. So we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you've spent time with us, either live or on the replay. And we hope that you have an absolutely fabulous week. We will see you next week at 10 a.m. Central Time on Wednesday. Have a great day.